Hi everyone. Dr. Gilbert here, and I'm joined with Kevin.
Hello.
Kevin Rogers, who is a student doctor going to
Western U.
Yeah. So he was with us last week. He's going to be 2 weeks ago, something like he'll be joining us for another week. But we get Kevin for another couple of weeks, so he's been helping out. And Rachel, how are you, Rachel?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing great. And I apologize for my painting project back here. So if it looks a little weird.
What are you working on there?
Just trying to paint the bedroom. I'm moving from my kid's bedroom. This is now becoming my office. So I have to take off like the racing stripes and paint it something a little bit more pleasant.
You want the racing stripes, huh? All right.
Yeah.
All right. And we are talking through Sleep Smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got the book right there. I forgot my book, but yeah.
There it is.
And we had a great conversation last week we were in this little burg in California driving up the coast. It was so fun. And
that was fun.
Yeah. But we are talking about just sleep hygiene and how to get better sleep, because sleep is so important. Yeah, sleep is so important. As a matter of fact, one of the lectures at the conference I went to, one of the docs was talking about sleep, and he was giving the example that he had a patient, nothing else changed except for her sleep quality over a 3-month period of time. She didn't change what she was eating or how she was exercising or anything like that. She changed her sleep quality, improved, and she actually built muscle and lost fat. Her body composition changed for the better, changing nothing except for the quality of her sleep. So it is so important. Sleep is so important, and it's something that we kind of put on the back burner, or we rob Peter to pay Paul, or we think we can get away with less, and we really can't. As human beings, we need to sleep. So what chapter are we on this week?
We are on chapter 4. And, I'm going to hold you accountable. Last week, you committed to a hard and fast goal of no screens, 90 minutes before bed. Did you succeed, Dr. Gilbert? Wah, wah.
All right, I'm just gonna be totally transparent. I haven't got.
Let's do it this way.
Forward.
Let's do it coaching wise, right? Because there's no shame, there's no criticism. Goals are hard to start. Habits are hard to change. So on a scale of 0 to 100%, what percentage would you give yourself in completion of that goal? And remember, it's not just every time you did the goal, but the way that you feel towards your progress of overall learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I said I was going to cut off all screens in like 90 minutes before I went to bed. I would definitely say my screen time has definitely decreased. Okay. All right. Now, I'm not going to blame anybody, but I had to be on the computer and do some work before I went to bed, which is really a bummer to me. But so anyway, so I would give myself like a 75%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's passing.
Passing. Yeah. It is passing. Yeah.
Yes. Ask the student. He's in it. What's passing? Yeah. Okay. So there we go. So now what are you changing for this next week?
What am I going to change? Okay. So for this week, I am going to listen to a book or read a book, or have some other kind of something going on in the background, I think, while I'm, if I have to spend time doing more computer work. Yeah. Well, no, I'm just going to make the goal of having the computer work done by 7:00. That's the goal.
Yeah. That's the goal.
That's the goal.
And you're still working towards it, right? You're figuring out what doesn't work, and you're learning what's going to work. And so it's a work in progress.
Work in progress. That's okay. Right. It is. Thank you for that, Rachel.
You're welcome. All right. Chapter 4, we are talking about caffeine. And as Sean Stevenson says in the book, Sleep Smarter, he says, have a caffeine curfew. So let's just, we can quickly just jump to the power tips at the end of the chapter.
Sure.
He would say a caffeine curfew should be somewhere around 12 to 2 p.m., meaning that's when you cut it off. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I've heard 10, 3, 2, 1. So at least, 10 hours before you're planning on going to bed, don't have any kind of stimulant, and then the question is, why are you having a stimulant in the first place? Maybe we need to get curious around that. But but definitely we know for sure, and it's just a fact without a doubt, that caffeine impacts sleep in a negative way. Yeah.
What a great lifestyle medicine question you just asked. Why are we looking for a stimulant in the first place, right? So we're going to the root cause, to the core. The problem is not the caffeine that you're having in the afternoon. It's why are we needing the caffeine in the afternoon?
Right. Yeah.
He does talk about there being a half-life of caffeine. So somewhere between 6 to 8 hours, depending on your metabolism and your body. Everyone's different. After you drink a cup of anything with caffeine, it takes 6 to 8 hours to half the milligrams of caffeine in your bloodstream. So if you've had a cup of coffee, let's say you have, 200 milligrams of caffeine, 100 milligrams are still floating around at 8 o'clock at night when you're trying to go to bed. So that's a way to think about why we want to move that curfew earlier if we can.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That's excellent. Yeah. So right. Most of us, we're trying to get to bed by 10 o'clock, because we're trying to get to bed before midnight for sure.
Yes.
Most of us who work during the day. Yeah, we want to work be active during the day and sleep at night. So before midnight for sure, and hopefully by 10, but it really depends on other things going on in your life. But so then 10 hours before that, you really don't want to have much caffeine beyond noon.
Right. And I think something that's really interesting that he points out that I didn't really recognize before I read this book was that caffeine can impact your sleep in a way that you don't even really, you may not know. So a lot of people say, oh, caffeine doesn't impact me. I can fall asleep, no problem. I don't ever have any trouble with caffeine. And what they don't realize is it might be impacting their quality when they're asleep. Or that they're not maybe going into those deeper states that we need to go through all the different stages of sleep. They may not fully be impacting or going into all those stages based on the caffeine, even if you can just fall asleep, no problem. So that's not always the right litmus test as to whether or not caffeine impacts your sleep.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Very good. Yeah.
All right. So tip number 2, and I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna leave it to you guys. I've got to go to a group coaching.
Okay. Good.
Tip number 2 is all about using. Tip 2 and 3 is all about using caffeine in an on-off cycle, or as a resetting of your cortisol, AM, PM. So he has some different ideas of using caffeine for what it can be beneficial for in these different ways. So he talks about a reset, and he talks about an on-off cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to head out.
Okay.
You guys have a good day.
Thanks, Rachel. Bye-bye. So what do you think about that, Kevin, about this on-off switch? Or just tell me what you think about caffeine in general. You can be real.
Right.
Yeah.
My real position, as you mentioned earlier, is coming from a lifestyle background. And so why would we want to take a stimulant? Mm-hmm. And what happens when we're taking a stimulant? Mm-hmm. The analogy I use is the racehorse. And we all know a racehorse is going along, and they're not feeding the racehorse to make them go faster. They whip the racehorse to make them go faster. Not a nice thing, but we didn't get any more energy or fuel in the racehorse, but somehow he's going faster. Mm-hmm. It's an internal drive. We're kind of whipping the adrenal glands into action.
Right.
That's what we're doing with stimulants as well.
Yeah.
And so I generally would like to reduce them or get them out entirely. Mm-hmm. And otherwise we're left with this kind of game of how do we manage our stimulant use?
Right. How do you manage the stimulant use? Right. That's a really good point. So the question again becomes, why do I need the stimulant to begin with? And I'd say most people say they need more energy during the day. Mm-hmm. And your point is, because of the stimulant affects the adrenal gland, right? And to get a little bit more cortisol, a little more boost, you kind of squeeze in the turnip sometimes at that point. And what is and you're actually doing the very thing maybe that isn't helping you really get energy, which is sleep, right? Because you're kind of feeding this cycle of not sleeping well, so not having energy, so using some other artificial means to get that energy.
Right.
Yeah. So okay. I got to really think about that one too. I know. So recently, my husband has actually asked me to cut back on caffeine because he thinks it affects me differently than I think it affects me. So I have to think about this one. And I have gone off caffeine for months, and then just because I was reading about it and then realizing I was having a lull in the afternoon, and okay, that wasn't working well. But and then I have decided that there's a certain amount for me that if I keep it there, if I manage that, then I don't have that afternoon slump. So, but that's interesting. I really hadn't thought about that analogy, and maybe doing a trial, just an experiment,
Right, because there's no right and wrong. It's just
right.
what we want to, choices we want to do and the consequences we get from them, and
Right.
play around with it.
Yeah. So maybe it's time to challenge ourselves to go off caffeine altogether. For me, I bet I could do that easily without a withdrawal. Some of us need to kind of back off.
The withdrawal thing also, like to my go, oh yeah, drugs do that. Withdrawal from drugs, the things that aren't healthy.
Yeah.
And there will be a little lull of tiredness as you kind of, but there's other ways to get energy.
Yeah.
You get better sleep, you get some exercise in.
Yeah. Right. Energy, for me, energy can come from the sun. Energy can come from spiritual practice. Great. Stretching, moving your body will improve your energy utilage. And then from the foods that are coming in as fuel, we can get energy from that. So water gives us energy. So lots of different ways to get energy rather than this artificial means with caffeine. But so this has been good. This has been good. I've been makes me think a little bit more about what's going into my body and what I'm trying to do. So anyway, well, thanks for joining us today, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time. All right. Until next time, stay well.
Be well.